The 2023-24 NHL regular season is officially in the books, which means it is bracket challenge time. Now, like we do every year, I did go ahead and create a league for the channel for you guys to join. So if you want to go ahead and join and submit a bracket, the link to that will be at the top of the description. I'll also leave a link pinned at the top of the comment section, and it'll be on the community tab as well, so it's not going to be difficult for you guys to find. I say this all the time when I'm making predictions. Don't take this too seriously. I just do this for fun. If I predict your favorite team to lose in the first round, I don't hate them, I promise. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket. In the Western Conference, the matchups are Dallas versus Vegas, Winnipeg versus the Avalanche, the Predators versus the Canucks, and the Oilers versus the Kings for the third consecutive year. Out east, we have the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, Boston versus Toronto, New York Rangers versus Washington Capitals, and the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders. Let's start off in the Western Conference with Dallas versus Vegas. The Dallas Stars' reward for finishing with the best record in the entire Western Conference is that they get to play the defending Stanley Cup champions in round one. I'm sure Stars fans are just absolutely thrilled about that. This should be a fantastic series though. Dallas has been a powerhouse all season long. Vegas had a bit more of a streaky regular season. They dealt with quite a few injuries to key players, Mark Stone being the big one, who is still currently injured and on LTIR. It doesn't sound like he's going to be ready for game one, but he is expected to return at some point during the playoffs. But despite the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are coming into the postseason as the number 8 seed, as the second wildcard team, I think everybody knows how dangerous this team can be and that there's definitely the potential for an upset here. That being said, I'm not predicting an upset. I'm actually going to go with the Dallas Stars to defeat the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round. I think it will be a relatively long series. I'll say 6 or 7 games. The Stars are just a well-oiled machine. They have been better than Vegas all season long in pretty much every area of the game. They were third in the NHL in goals for per game, top 10 in goals against per game. Both special teams significantly better than the Vegas Golden Knights as well. The Stars have a very well-balanced offense. All 4 lines can score. They have 9 players on the roster who put up 50-plus points during the regular season. Defensively, they are fantastic. They have one of the best pairings in the NHL, in my opinion, with Heiskanen and Harley. And in goal, Jake Ottinger did struggle at times this season, but he finished the year strong, winning 6 of his last 7 starts, including 2 shutouts. And he's a guy who has notoriously been a fantastic playoff performer, so I don't have any concerns there. So again, I'm taking the Stars to advance to the second round over the Vegas Golden Knights, but like I said, I don't think it's going to be easy, and I'm expecting this to be a pretty long series. Moving on now to the next series in the Western Conference, we have the Winnipeg Jets versus the Colorado Avalanche. Another fantastic matchup. One of my best friends is an Avalanche fan, and his brother, who's another one of my best friends, is a Jets fan, so I'm really just hoping those two don't kill each other over these next couple of weeks. I really went back and forth on this one for a while, despite the fact that the Jets are coming into this series as the higher seed with home ice advantage. I feel like a lot of people view the Avalanche as the favorite in this series. I will say I definitely think the Avalanche have the advantage in terms of the top end players, the game breakers, the guys that are capable of taking over a game themselves, players like Makar, Rantanen, and of course McKinnon, who a lot of people think should win the Hart Trophy this season. But then again, I think there's a lot of areas where the Jets have the clear advantage. The biggest one being goaltending. Connor Hellebuck is arguably the best goaltender in the National Hockey League, and goaltending at times for the Avalanche this season has been a bit of a struggle. It just never really became a big problem because they scored so many goals and they were still able to win games. I think the Jets' team defense is better than the Avalanche as well. Sure, they might not have, the notable names on their blue line like a Devin Taves or a Cale Makar, but that blue line has been great this year, and again, the forwards bought into the system and played a complete game as well. The Jets finished this season with the least amount of goals against in the league. They were able to lock up the William M. Jennings Trophy. This series is really a clash of styles. You have the league's best offense in the Colorado Avalanche going up against the league's best defense in the Winnipeg Jets. Something's got to give though. A team has to lose, and I hate to bet against McKinnon, especially, with the way he's playing right now, but I'm kind of leaning Winnipeg here. I think home ice is going to play a big factor in this series. I think it was really important for Winnipeg to, lock up home ice advantage in this series like they did, winning 8 of their last 10 games. Like I previously mentioned, the Avalanche, I think, do have the clear advantage in terms of star power, but in the playoffs, I think depth is really important, and although the Avalanche, in my opinion, did a really good job at the trade deadline of improving the depth, I like the Jets' depth a little bit more top to bottom, but I think the goaltending matchup is really the biggest reason why I'm leaning Winnipeg here. Sure, Georgiev was able to win 38 games this season, but he had a sub 900 save percentage. I'm expecting Hellebuck to really be the deciding factor in this series. I do also feel like Winnipeg has to be a disciplined team and stay out of the box to win this series. Their special teams have not been good, and obviously Colorado has one of the most lethal power plays in the league. I'm really looking forward to this series though. Like Dallas Vegas, Vegas, I think it should be a fun one, and like Dallas Vegas, I think this is going to be a long series. I'm going to go Jets in 7. Moving on now to the next series, we have the 1 seed in the Pacific, the Vancouver Canucks, going up against the wild card Nashville Predators, and I'm probably going to fall to favor with a lot of Canucks fans here, but I think this is where I'm going to predict my first upset in terms of the seeding. I'm actually going to go with Nashville to advance over Vancouver, and my main reason for this is pretty simple. I just feel like Nashville's style of play is much better suited for the playoffs than Vancouver. Sure, the Canucks had a fantastic regular season, not taking anything away from them. They finished with 109 points, but the Nashville Predators, like the last couple of months of the season, they were arguably the best team in the NHL. In my opinion, the Nashville Predators were definitely one of the most surprising teams in the entire NHL this season. I didn't predict them to make the playoffs before the season started, and here I am predicting them to upset the 1 seed Vancouver Canucks in the first round. I just really like the way the Nashville Predators play. They wear their opponents down, they forecheck really well, they're able to roll all 4 lines, and they get contributions from up and down the lineup. They funnel pucks to the net, they crash the net, which is kind of the opposite of the Vancouver Canucks, who are more selective with their shots. They led the NHL in shooting percentage this season. There's a lot of really fun individual matchups in this series as well. You have 2 of the absolute best defensemen on the planet with Roman Josi and Quinn Hughes going head to head, 2 elite goaltenders in UC Saros and Thatcher Demko, and a couple of super Swedes in Elias Pettersson and Philip Forsberg, who both had fantastic regular seasons. And although I am picking Nashville to advance here, I don't think this series is going to be a cakewalk for them by any means. I'm going to say it takes them 6 games. Moving along now, we have the final first round matchup in the Western Conference, the Edmonton Oilers against the Los Angeles Kings. You got to feel for Kings fans, the 3rd consecutive year they've made the playoffs, and it's the 3rd consecutive year they have to go against Connor McDavid. The last 2 years have not gone in favor of the Los Angeles Kings, and to be honest, I'm not expecting a different result this year. I'm going with the Oilers to advance. The turnaround that the Edmonton Oilers had after firing Jay Woodcroft this season was pretty insane. If it hadn't been for that disastrous start to the season, this is a team that very well could have won the President's Trophy. The Los Angeles Kings are another team that went through a coaching change this season, and it benefited them as well. They were definitely much better under Jim Hiller than they were towards the latter part of Todd McClellan's tenure with the team. Defensively, I do give the Kings the edge in this series. I think they are a better defensive team than the Oilers, but offensively, obviously the edge goes to the Edmonton Oilers. They are just an absolute powerhouse offensively. You have McDavid and Draisaitl doing McDavid and Draisaitl things, both finishing top 10 in the NHL in points. Evan Bouchard has blossomed into one of the absolute best offensive defensemen in the league. Zach Hyman had a career year, scoring 50 for the first time in his career, and it's not like the Oilers are bad defensively either. They've been pretty good defensively with Chris Knoblauch behind the bench. Stuart Skinner, despite a disastrous start to the season, really settled in and overall finished with pretty respectable numbers. I'll say the same thing about this series that I said about the other 3 Western Conference first round matchups. I don't think this is going to be a short series. I'll say the Oilers get it done in 6. I really don't see any first round matchup in the Western Conference being a short series, though. I think we get a lot of great matchups. Moving on now to the Eastern Conference first round matchups. First up, we have the Battle of Florida, the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. I am so excited for this series. Always super fun to watch when these 2 teams go head to head. This is now the 3rd time in the last 4 years that these 2 teams will meet in the playoffs. Back in 2021, Tampa Bay knocked off Florida in 6 games in the first round. In 2022, Tampa Bay swept the Panthers in the second round, despite coming into that series as the lower seed. Florida actually won the President's Trophy that year. So the Panthers are still looking to get their first playoff series victory over their biggest rival, and I think it's going to happen this year. I'm going with the Florida Panthers to win this series, and I'm going to say they do it in 6 games. This is a much different Florida Panthers team than the one that lost the previous 2 playoff matchups against the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2021 and 2022, and this is also a much different Lightning team than those previous years as well. The Florida Panthers have been an absolute powerhouse all season long. They were in contention for the President's Trophy. They finished with 12 more points during the regular season than the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Panthers also got the better of the Lightning during the regular season series, winning 2 out of the 3 matchups. And this is a Florida Panthers team that is really just built for the playoffs, and we saw that last year when they just squeaked into that final wildcard spot and were able to go on that miraculous run to the Stanley Cup Finals. The way they play really really just overwhelms opponents. They are extremely physical. They have a relentless forecheck. They're going to have gloves in people's faces after every single whistle. They're a very stingy team. They don't give up a lot of high quality chances. They're great on the cycle, and for the most part, they just carry the play throughout the course of a game. They were one of the absolute best defensive teams in the NHL during the regular season. It definitely helps out a lot when your superstar forwards, guys that produce a lot of offense like Barkov and Reinhart, are also two of the best two-way players in the league. I seen a stat on Twitter the other day, I think it might have been from Jay Fresh, and it was something along the lines of Barkov and Gustav Forsling have only been on the ice together at 5-on-5 for 9 goals against all season long, which is just insane. Would I be shocked if the Tampa Bay Lightning are able to pull off the upset here? No, I don't think anyone would be when you have Kucherov playing at this high of a level, and Vasilevsky, we know what he's capable of doing in a playoff series. Anything can happen, more than maybe any other team in the NHL. The Lightning know what it takes to win a playoff series, but I am pretty confident that the Florida Panthers are going to be able to get it done this year, so I have them advancing over the Lightning in 6 games. Moving on now to the next Eastern Conference matchup, another series that should be absolutely fantastic, the Boston Bruins versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sure a lot of Leafs fans' PTSD has already kicked in before game 1 has even started. We all know the history between these two teams. In the postseason, things really have not gone in favor of the Toronto Maple Leafs when these two teams match up. Last year in the playoffs, the Leafs were finally able to get over that hump and exercise their first round demons, knocking off the Tampa Bay Lightning. And now just a year later in the playoffs, there's another demon they have to exercise, and that is defeating the Boston Bruins in the playoffs. The Bruins did get the better of the Maple Leafs during the regular season series this year pretty convincingly, winning all 4 matchups. And I think they're going to get the better of the Maple Leafs in this playoff series as well. I'm going to take the Boston Bruins to win this series over the Maple Leafs, and I'll say it takes them 7 games. I do think the Maple Leafs have a lot more firepower offensively, but the Bruins have the clear advantage defensively and certainly in net. Ilya Samsonov has definitely been better down the stretch after his disastrous start to the season, but he still looks shaky at times, and when it comes to the Boston Bruins, you have not 1, but 2 elite goaltenders. When one falters, you can fall back on Jeremy Swayman. If he falters, you can fall back on Linus Ullmark. You have to imagine the Bruins are going to be very hungry and eager to come out and right the wrongs of last year's postseason. After that historic regular season, they downright choked in the playoffs, choking away that 3-1 series lead to the Florida Panthers. So I'm expecting the Boston Bruins to come out in this playoff series and look to make a statement. I also just think they're the better all-around team than the Toronto Maple Leafs are. I also think home ice advantage is going to be a key factor in this series as well. So those are the main reasons why I'm picking Boston over Toronto. But again, I think it's going to be a long series. I'm saying it goes 7 games. Moving on now to the next first round matchup in the Eastern Conference, we have the New York Rangers, the President's Trophy winning New York Rangers against the Washington Capitals. A Washington Capitals team that sold at the deadline, finished the regular season with a negative 37 goal differential, and somehow we're still able to squeak into that last wildcard spot. Am I salty that this isn't the Red Wings in this position? I sure am, but Red Wings bias aside, I think we can all agree that Washington is heavily outmatched in this series, so I'm definitely picking the Rangers to advance here. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I'm going to say they get it done in 5 games. I do think Washington can steal a game. This is a team that's been playing, playoff games basically for over a month now. You have Charlie Lindgren playing out of his mind. So factoring in those 2 things, I do believe Washington should be able to win a game, probably on home ice, but I don't view them as a legit threat at all to win this series. And now finally, for the last first round matchup, the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders, the 2 seed in the Metro versus the 3 seed. A rematch of last year's first round where the Carolina Hurricanes were able to knock off the Islanders in 6 games, and I do expect history to repeat itself here. I'm going to go with the Carolina Hurricanes to advance over the Islanders, and I'll say it takes them 6 games again. The Islanders are a pesky team. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight, but I just think they're outmatched here. Carolina is clicking on all cylinders right now. Freddie Anderson has been absolutely lights out since returning to the lineup. The trade deadline edition of Jake Gensel has looked great so far. He put up big time numbers for the Hurricanes down the stretch, and he's exactly the kind of player that I think Carolina needed. Sometimes when it comes to the Hurricanes in previous years, their offense has dried up in the postseason, and I think now with a guy like Jake Gensel in the lineup to complement guys like Aho, Svechnikov, Natchez, Jarvis, and Teravainen, there's a lesser chance that happens this year. So again, I'm taking the Hurricanes to advance in 6 games and win the Sebastian Aho Bowl. Can't wait to hear those jokes over the next couple of weeks. So that does it for my first round predictions. I only took one upset in terms of the seeding, which doesn't make me feel too confident in my predictions because we know when it comes to the NHL, there's always upsets. It's one of the toughest sports to predict. But let's move on to the second round now that we're past, kind of the preview and predictions for the first round. I'll start to fly through this because it's all hypothetical now from this point on. We don't know if these matchups are going to happen. If they do happen, what injuries did these teams sustain during the first round, all that kind of stuff. So let's start off in the Western Conference with the first second round matchup, the Dallas Stars versus the Winnipeg Jets. And I've already seen a lot of brackets, picking Dallas to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, but for me, this is where their road ends. I'm going to go with Winnipeg to advance over Dallas here. The age-old saying, defense wins championships, and the Winnipeg Jets won the Jennings Trophy. They allowed the least amount of goals against. They're an incredibly deep team offensively, especially, with the trade deadline addition of Tyler Toffoli. I think Cole Perfetti served as a healthy scratch quite a bit down the stretch, so I think that tells you all you need to know about their depth. Having him scratched in your lineup, you're probably doing pretty good. I just really like this Jets team this year. I like the way the roster's constructed. I like the way they play, and again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, they have arguably the best goaltender in the league in Connor Hellebuck, and in a playoff series, that can take you a long way. For the second round matchup in the Western Conference, we have the Edmonton Oilers versus the Nashville Predators. The Oilers obviously having home ice advantage as the higher seed, and in this series, I'm definitely going to take the Edmonton Oilers to advance and make it to the Western Conference Finals. I really believe the Oilers are for real this year. I think this is one of the best supporting casts McDavid and Draisaitl have had in their NHL careers so far, and I kind of feel like Edmonton's side of the bracket is probably the easiest path to the conference finals of any other side of the bracket. And I mean, no disrespect to teams, like LA, Vancouver, or Nashville, but I do believe Edmonton is significantly better than those three other teams. So I have an all-Canadian Western Conference Finals matchup between Edmonton and Winnipeg. But before we get to that series, let's go ahead and look at the second round matchups in the East. First up, we have the Florida Panthers versus the Boston Bruins, a rematch of last year's first round matchup where Florida had that absolutely incredible comeback. And as much as I love the way the Panthers play and think they have a fantastic shot at winning the Stanley Cup this year, I'm actually going to go with the Bruins to advance in this series. After the way they went out last year, I just kind of get the feeling that they're going to go on a run this year, and sometimes when it comes to making predictions, the best way to do things is just go with your gut, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. For my bracket, the next second round matchup in the East is the New York Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes, the 1 versus the 2 seed in the Metro Division, and I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm going to take the Carolina Hurricanes to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals over the New York Rangers. I think this would be a fantastic matchup. These two teams were two of the best teams in the league during the regular season. My reason for picking Carolina over the Rangers here, a lot of the same things I said, picking them over the Islanders. I've just been really encouraged by what I've seen from the Carolina Hurricanes, these last few weeks of the regular season after the trade deadline, adding somebody like Jake Gensel, getting your starting goaltender back in Freddie Anderson and him looking as good as he has. And Carolina is another team similar to Boston. I think the way they went out last year is really going to light a fire under them, and they're going to come into this year's playoffs and look to prove something. They got swept in the conference finals last year. You have to imagine that has left a sour taste in everybody's mouth on that roster. So my Eastern Conference Finals matchup is the Carolina Hurricanes versus the Boston Bruins. But before we talk about that, let's go back out west and talk about Winnipeg versus Edmonton. And for this series, I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Jets to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals and defeat the Edmonton Oilers here. Again, one of the absolute best defenses in the league and arguably the best goaltender in the league in Hellebuck. I think that's a pretty good recipe for knocking off McDavid and Draisaitl. And for the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm going to go with Carolina to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals and defeat Boston, finally getting over the hump and getting back to the Stanley Cup Finals. I believe Carolina has lost 12 straight conference finals games, which is pretty crazy. So in their last couple of tries, not only has Carolina not been able to advance and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, out of the conference finals, they haven't even been able to win a game. I think that all changes this year. So my Stanley Cup Finals for my bracket is Winnipeg coming out of the West against Carolina coming out of the East. And for my Stanley Cup champion, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Carolina Hurricanes to win the 2024 Stanley Cup. I think it's their year. As much as I want the cup to come back to Canada, I would love to see Winnipeg win if this series were to happen, but I think it's Carolina's year. Again, I've just loved what I've seen from them the last few months of the regular season. I think on paper, this is the best roster Carolina has had in a very long time. They have a very balanced lineup. They're a well-coached team with a lot of playoff experience. If their star players can show up consistently and produce offensively throughout the playoffs, then I think this team is destined to go on a run. So my pick for the 2024 Stanley Cup is the Carolina Hurricanes. Hurricanes. So that is going to wrap up this video. That is my bracket for the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, like I said at the beginning, don't take this too seriously. It's just for fun. I don't hate your favorite team, I swear. If you guys do want to join the league that I created for the channel for you guys to go ahead and submit brackets in, the link to that again will be at the top of the description. I'll leave it in the pinned comment and it'll be on the community tab as well. And as always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so let me know down below in the comments who is your pick to win the 2024 Stanley Cup. If you guys enjoyed this video and you're excited for the playoffs to begin, then be sure to leave the video a like. That is definitely the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all again soon.